Hello and welcome to Balanced Existence, a space for like-minded and open-minded individuals seeking to better themselves in all facets of life, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and physically. I am so excited to be with you here today for a collective reading, and I don't really know exactly where it's going to take us, but I want to just pull some cards and get started. And so immediately right off the bat, we're getting the Hierophant. So, wow, this is a really powerful energy I'm picking up on. And I feel like a lot of those listening to this reading are seeking some kind of spiritual guidance or maybe some kind of change as it relates to your perception of life or your values or traditions. Like you may be seeking to get in touch with more traditional values. And with this seeking of spiritual wisdom, I'm getting that like you have opened yourself, not just your mind, but your heart to spiritual guidance. You may be getting more in touch with your angels and spirit guides. You may be praying to them more, or you may have just planted a seed of intention recently to open yourself more to these types of things. Maybe you've been noticing angel numbers more, or like noticing feathers or coins on the ground as symbols of your angels near you. And another thing I actually want to touch on about this is something that's kind of been on my mind lately that I've recently downloaded, which is this concept of the tarot being used as a tool for guidance. And especially in the context of YouTube and me making videos on YouTube, I personally recently went through this processing of what it means to make this kind of content and offer these readings on YouTube. And I noticed that there's a lot of, for lack of a better word, clickbaity titles of videos. And it kind of held a mirror up to me and reminded me of a time when I used to watch YouTube videos, and I did it with this undertone of kind of seeking something externally, like seeking external validation. And I think that this is a very common thing in not just the YouTube world, not just the tarot world, but in spiritual communities in general. And so I went through this period where I really only felt comfortable sharing downloaded, channeled messages because those felt like authentic to things that I had personally received as downloads. And I started feeling like, whether it's tarot or whether it's a download, I felt really hyper aware of not putting the message out there in, like, again, for lack of a better word, a clickbaity kind of way. And so this is something that I've kind of been processing over the last few weeks, because there is kind of this duality of this part of us that wants to seek this spiritual guidance, and this other part of us that sometimes can resort to these external sources of validation to the extent where we may be receiving an input of information from the external or outside world more than we're actually getting in touch with our own inner world and kind of expressing that outward. So things like journaling or just meditation or anything that brings you to a point of, silent reflection where you can be in touch with your own inner guidance and journal about it or speak about it. It's like the duality of the directions of inside out versus outside in. And so I really feel like it can be kind of a slippery slope with those seeking guidance, where they kind of go down rabbit holes, or they get into this habit of constantly receiving external information more so than they give themselves the opportunity to, practice their own creative energy and expressing that outwards. And so I'm speaking on this because, of course, I've done this, and I've been at a place in my life where I would listen to tarot readings, looking and listening for that good news that I wanted to hear. And I didn't give myself really any time to have moments of silence and reflection about my own internal state and my own intuitive nudges and intuitive guidance. And so I was recently just reluctant to make anything that I thought might be something to ease somebody's ego. And more so I wanted to make, I wanted to channel or make a tarot reading, make a video of a tarot reading that was going to offer genuine, meaningful guidance for people. So with this Hierophant coming up, I feel like this is a really timely way for this message to come through, which is this concept of seeking spiritual guidance, but also like having that inner knowing of your own internal state and your soul's essence. So I would love to hear from you if that resonates or what your thoughts are on that. But basically, like when we are seeking guidance, we're seeking alignment with our true, authentic selves, right? And that's something that only we can know by tapping into that internal space within us. And the more we clear that space, the better we'll be able to listen to and hear, listen to our intuition and hear our angels and our guides communicate to us. So I do think tarot is a wonderful tool for us to practice that self-awareness, but I really encourage those listening to follow your own intuition. And if you feel like you need time of silence, to honor that and give that to yourself, right? Like if you're spending an hour on YouTube or an hour consuming external information or content, maybe you also need just as much time to just sit in silence, right? Like how much of our days are we soaking up the external world like a sponge versus actually creating something that we can then put outwards, like as I mentioned before, the duality of those two directions, inward and outward. So, okay, so I wanted to just leave that here because I feel like that was a really potent download that came through to me recently, and I wanted to share that with you guys, and also just to put out there that I really want these readings to be helpful, but I believe that can really only happen if you are practicing your own intuition just as much as you are receiving external information. So also I'm getting like this concept of like nothing really being permanent and energy is always changing. And so I'm hearing from my guides, like, because the energies are always changing, it's that much more crucial for us to constantly be practicing, that balanced way of not just consuming external information, but also creating, like I said, creating from the inside out and practicing that creative expression. And a lot of us, especially those of us who may have twin flame journeys, may be familiar with the concept of union with the self and ego degradation. And this is another, I feel like my guides are kind of taking me down this tangent right now, but what I'm hearing is how critical it is that we understand what it feels like to be in union with ourselves, and what it feels like to kind of, whether you want to call it ego degradation or just simply taming your ego and being aware of it, That is a crucial part of the spiritual journey, and one that will only happen if you are making space and honoring your soul and your intuition. And that's what that union with the self is reflecting, is representing. When we're at union with ourselves, which of course we exist in a human body, we exist in the physical realm, like we're going to have an ego. We'll never get rid of the ego. So whether you call it ego degradation or just taming your ego, but ultimately, like, the more that we're able to tap into that feeling of union with the self, the more in balance we are with what may become a very hyperactive ego. We're constantly, on this spiritual journey, we're constantly taming our ego. And so being able to tap into that union with yourself and to know your body, to know your feelings, to know your internal experience so strongly that at any given moment you can come back home to yourself, that is key for living in balance with the inevitable ego and egoic thoughts that come with the human experience. So, okay, that was one card, and I know we've already touched on a lot of topics. And I want to pull a little more. Okay, so we're getting the King of Wands, wow, and the Nine of Cups and the Ace of Cups. So I feel like, wow, this is very powerful energy I'm getting. With the King of Wands, just feeling this leadership. And I really feel like this is you, paired with the Hierophant, like this is you taking leadership of your spirituality, of your values, your spiritual values, and really having that ownership and accountability for how you show up and how you move through your internal world, right? Like, as you are seeking spiritual guidance, you're also very much in this confident embodiment that has a vision, that has a purpose, and you are showing up with intention when it comes to your spirituality. And with the Nine of Cups, like, this is what's fueling your manifestations, right? So if there's something in your life that you have been aiming to create, this is going to happen when you are kind of reaching that union of self, like we talked about, reaching that confident leadership and ownership of your spirituality and showing up in life like unapologetically in support of, your intuitive knowing and surrendered to your soul's desires, right? Like in service of your spirituality in a way, but also the complete leader and, embodying that creator energy. And that in itself is kind of like a duality, because we surrender, right? Like, we surrender to the external world and the things we can't control. We surrender to divine timing. We surrender to the energies that are more powerful, like spiritual energies that are more powerful than us, like the creator energy, right? But at the same time, we take responsibility and we hold ourselves with an empowerment of, okay, this is what I would like to create in my life. And so I'm going to take this type of action. I'm going to show up in this way. And, I'm going to practice to surrender. I'm going to practice gratitude. I'm going to, put my vision and purpose forward through action. There's that duality of surrender as well as taking that action. So, and then we've got with the Ace of Cups, I'm feeling like this is kind of a new era of you showing up in this way, in this empowered but also surrendered way. And that Nine of Cups is really pointing to this new timeline that you're entering, where your manifestations are showing up because you've learned to balance, the duality of surrender and action. You've learned to balance the the duality of your masculine and the feminine, you know, like you are showing up in such an all-encompassing, balanced way that this new era is really pointing towards your manifestations falling into place. And then we have the Tower. So wow, that's very powerful energy as well. I feel like for some of you listening, in order to get to this place of balance, you're going to need to completely tear down or burn down paradigms or foundations that you had in place that were based on limiting beliefs. Some of you are very much in the thick of this right now. And others of you may be coming out of this right now. You may be looking back at the past year and recognizing how much you've changed and how much your values just don't, or your old values just don't align anymore, and how much you've had a complete overhaul of what you stand for. And it's been such a, maybe a heavy, but also a beautiful journey, I'm hearing. And yeah, this is just a huge transformation. This is like such powerful energy I'm really feeling. And then we're getting the King of Pentacles. Wow. Okay, so we have two kings now, you know, along with the King of Wands before, we've got the King of Pentacles. And this with the Hierophant, I'm just getting such strong, like empowered, divine masculine energy. And you may resonate as a divine masculine, or you may be predominantly a divine feminine, and this is pointing towards your inner divine masculine. Of course, take the genders as they resonate. I mean, it doesn't have to correspond to gender. But with the King of Pentacles, I'm just seeing like complete stability and security and material abundance and the success, right? Like this Nine of Cups, the manifestations you wanted, just complete success in that area. And we're getting the Four of Wands too. Wow, these are so many just beautiful cards that are coming out in this spread. The Four of Wands, something to celebrate, being able to look back and see everything you've accomplished to get yourself to this place, and to feel that like beautiful celebration here. And I want to pull some oracle cards to get a better sense of what may be kind of the underlying themes here. So we're getting awareness. Pay attention to the subtleties. Look with new eyes. There are signs and omens everywhere. Wow, this is very much what we were talking about in terms of being open to spiritual guidance, being open to, recognizing signs from your angels, whether it's coins, feathers, angel numbers, and looking with new eyes and having that new perspective. So I feel like you are really getting in tune with your internal world, and it's allowing you to see your external world in a way that's so much more lighthearted. I'm seeing just like a beam of light like penetrating your aura, your existence, how you see the world. It's just being completely infused with light. And then we also have healing. So yeah, I feel like this is very much fitting with the Tower card. Bless all in need of healing, hope, and love. Spirit, grant us strength and wisdom. Guide us to the path of wellness. Yeah, I'm feeling really strong energy in terms of overcoming past paradigms and limiting beliefs and ways that you showed up that just simply will not serve you anymore. Wow. Okay. Is there anything else I can pull here for this collective amidst their transformation? Realization. The frequency of realization supports the internal process of becoming aware of our heart-centered truth, as well as the external process of becoming our highest expression in the world. Wow, that is so in tune with what we were talking about this whole reading. That's crazy. Okay, so the realization when you're on that frequency of your internal process and your alignment with self, your union with self, and your heart-centered truth, this is the beautiful internal world, right? This is our soul's essence, as well as the external process of becoming our highest expression in this world. That's that looking at the world with new eyes, having that awareness, having that King of Wands leadership, action, being able to show up, with that open Hierophant energy that's open to spiritual guidance, balancing that internal and external. Wow, that's a beautiful close. I feel like that's just such a powerful message to end this reading. So I'm going to leave this here. I hope that it resonated for you. Let me know in the comments if any thoughts or if it resonated. I'd love to have you subscribe and stick around for more readings like this in the future. And thank you so much for joining and listening, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.